Imagine this. A crowded bus, the hum of conversation, the occasional screech of brakes. Just another ordinary day. But in the back row, a loudmouthed teenager is hurling insults at an elderly woman, mocking her wrinkled hands, her slow movements, even the way she clutches her worn-out handbag. The other passengers shift uncomfortably, but no one speaks up. The woman stays silent, her eyes downcast, taking every cruel word without a flinch. And then, just when you think this is just another story about disrespect, something shocking happens. Something that changes everything. Now, if you're watching this, I know exactly why you clicked. You've seen those viral videos entitled Teens, Public Confrontations, Instant Karma, and you're waiting for that moment when the tables turn. Well, trust me, this story delivers. But here's the thing, this isn't just about some brat getting what he deserves. This is about secrets, the kind that hide behind tired eyes and quiet voices. That elderly woman? She isn't who she seems. And by the time this ride is over, that rude teen will wish he'd never opened his mouth. Let me ask you something. Have you ever underestimated someone? Maybe you judged them too quickly, wrote them off as weak or unimportant, only to realize too late that you were dead wrong? That's exactly what's about to happen here. Because while that teen thinks he's the one in control, he has no idea what's coming. And neither do you. Here's what I can tell you. Her name is Martha. She's 78 years old, a widow, and she rides this bus every Wednesday to visit someone very important. The kid? His name's Jake, 17, cocky, the kind of guy who thinks the world owes him respect. But today, the universe has other plans. Because when Martha finally looks up and speaks, her voice isn't shaky or meek. It's ice cold. And what she says next? Well, let's just say Jake's whole life is about to flip upside down. But here's where I need you to focus. This isn't just a story about karma, it's about the hidden battles people fight every day. The ones you'd never guess just by looking at them. Martha's got a past, and when it comes crashing into Jake's present, nothing will ever be the same. So tell me, do you really think you know how this ends? Because I promise you, the twist is coming, and it's not what you expect. Stick around. By the time this bus reaches its final stop, you'll see why some lessons can't be unlearned. And Jake? Well, let's just say he's about to find out the hard way. Part 2. The hidden truth and the warning. Jake thought he had the upper hand, right up until Martha locked eyes with him. The air on the bus grew thick, the other passengers holding their breath as her voice cut through the tension like a knife. You don't know who I am, boy. But you will. The words hung there, heavy with something Jake couldn't quite place. Not just anger, but something darker. A warning. Then, just like that, she stood, her frail-looking frame suddenly radiating an eerie stillness, and stepped off at the next stop without another word. For a second, Jake laughed it off, brushing off the weird moment to his friends. Old lady probably thinks she's in a mob movie, he sneered. But later that night, his phone buzzed with a notification, a missed call from an unknown number. No voicemail, no text, just silence. He shrugged it off, wrong number probably. But then his social media blew up. A video of him mocking Martha had been posted online, except this one had been edited. His cruelest lines looped, his face zoomed in, while Martha's silent dignity made him look like a monster. The comments were brutal. Who raised this kid? Hope he gets what's coming to him. Worse yet, his school's principal had seen it. There was talk of suspension. Jake panicked. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was just messing around. How did some random old lady end up making him the villain of the internet? He needed answers. He went back to the bus stop the next day, hoping to find Martha, to apologize, or at least figure out who the heck she was. But she wasn't there. Instead, an older man in a faded army jacket sat on the bench, watching him a little too closely. You looking for someone? The man asked, his voice gravelly. Jake hesitated, then nodded. That woman from yesterday, Martha. You know her? The man's expression shifted, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. You don't want to go digging into Martha's business, kid. Trust me, That should have been Jake's first clue to walk away. But now he was hooked. Who is this woman? Why did the mere mention of her name make people tense up? He dug deeper, searching online, asking around, until he stumbled onto an old newspaper clipping from decades ago. A black and white photo of a much younger Martha standing beside a police officer, her face grim. The headline? Asterisk, local woman testifies in shocking trial. Dangerous secrets expose. Asterisk, before he could read further, the page refreshed, and the article was gone. Deleted. Like it never existed. Then, his phone buzzed again. This time, a text. Asterisk, stop while you still can. Asterisk, no sender. No trace. Jake's hands shook. This wasn't just some sweet old lady he'd insulted. Martha had a past, one someone didn't want him knowing. And now, he was in way over his head. But here's the thing about secrets. Once you start pulling the thread, the whole thing unravels. And Jake was about to find out just how deep this went, because the next day, when he stepped onto the bus, Martha was waiting for him. And this time, she wasn't alone. Instant karma, entitled teen learns lesson, shocking bus confrontation, hidden past revealed, dark secrets exposed, viral revenge story, mysterious old woman, unexpected twist, true story, must-watch drama, asterisk, 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 part 3. The web tightens. Jake's stomach dropped the moment he saw Martha sitting calmly at the front of the bus, her gnarled hands folded neatly in her lap as if she'd been expecting him. Beside her sat a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, his sharp eyes tracking Jake's every move like a predator, sizing up prey. The air felt charged, thick with unspoken danger, and for the first time in his life, Jake fought the urge to turn and bolt. But before he could even process his next move, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. Another message. This time, it was a grainy photo of his own house, taken from a street, time-stamped just an hour earlier. No words. No demands. Just a silent, unmistakable threat. His mind raced. Who was sending these? Martha? The man beside her? Or someone else entirely? The bus lurched forward, sealing his fate. There was no getting off now. He slid into the nearest empty seat, pulse hammering, and risked another glance toward the front. The man was whispering something to Martha, his expression grim, and Jake could have sworn he caught his own name in the hushed exchange. Then, as if sensing his stare, Martha turned her head slightly, just enough for Jake to see the ghost of a smile on her lips. Not warm. Not forgiving. The kind of smile that said, asterisk, you have no idea what you've stepped into. Meanwhile, across town, Jake's best friend, Tyler, was staring at his own phone in disbelief. A voicemail had just popped up, distorted, mechanized, like the caller had deliberately scrambled their voice. Tell Jake to let it go, the message hissed. Asterisk, or you'll both regret it. Asterisk. Tyler had laughed off Jake's paranoid texts earlier, chalking it up to drama. But this felt real. He tried calling Jake back, but the line went straight to voicemail. Then, as he stepped outside to clear his head, he noticed it, a sleek black car idling at the end of a street, the driver's face obscured by shadows. It didn't move, didn't leave, just sat there, watching. Back on the bus, Jake's fingers flew across his phone screen, texting Tyler frantically. Asterisk, dude, something's seriously wrong. I think. Asterisk. His thumb hovered over send when a shadow fell over him. The man from the front now stood in the aisle, blocking out the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Up close, Jake could see the faded scar running along his jawline, the way his knuckles bore the telltale marks of a lifetime of fights. You're a hard kid to warn, the man muttered, his voice low enough that only Jake could hear. Asterisk. Last chance. Walk away. Asterisk. Jake opened his mouth to respond, but the man cut him off with a sharp shake of his head. Asterisk. Not just you at risk now. Think about your friend. Ice flooded Jake's veins. How did this stranger know about Tyler? Unless they'd been watching. Unless they'd been planning this. The bus screeched to a halt at the next stop, and the man stepped back, jerking his chin toward the doors. Asterisk. Get off. Forget her. Or next time, we don't talk. Then he turned and walked back to Martha, leaving Jake drowning in a sea of unanswered questions. Who were these people? What did they want? And why was Tyler suddenly dragged into this? But the most terrifying question of all? Jake wasn't even sure if Martha was the victim anymore. Because as the bus pulled away, he caught one last glimpse of her through the grimy window, and this time, she wasn't smiling. She was staring right at him with a look that could only be described as pity. Hidden danger, sinister warning, friend in peril, mysterious threats, dark secrets revealed, bus confrontation, suspenseful true story, shocking twist, high-stakes drama, must-watch mystery, Part 4. The trap closes. Jake's legs carried him 3 blocks before he finally stopped, lungs burning, sweat beading at his temples despite the chill in the air. He ducked into a dimly lit alley, pressing his back against the cold brick wall as he fumbled for his phone. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped it. Tyler's name flashed on the screen, but the call went dead after 1 ring. No voicemail. No follow-up text. Just silence. That was when the first real wave of terror hit him, the kind that crawls up your spine and settles deep in your gut, whispering that you've made a mistake you can't take back. The walk home felt like navigating a minefield. Every passing car slowed just enough to make his breath hitch. Every shadow between streetlights seemed to shift unnaturally, as if something, or someone, was keeping pace just out of sight. By the time he reached his house, his nerves were frayed raw. The porch light was off, though he could have sworn he'd left it on. The front door was unlocked. His mom's car was gone, even though she should have been home from work by now. Nothing was where it should be. Nothing made sense. He crept inside, flipping on lights as he went, half expecting to find Martha's stern face waiting for him in the living room. But the house was empty. Too empty. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked. Normal sounds that now felt like taunts. Upstairs, his bedroom door was slightly ajar. Had he left it like that? He pushed it open slowly, and that's when he saw it. A single envelope on his pillow, crisp and white against the rumpled sheets. No stamp. No address. Just his name written in careful, looping script. Inside was a photograph. Tyler, blindfolded, wrists bound to a chair. The timestamp in the corner read today. Jake's vision blurred. His throat closed. The room spun. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was a declaration. They weren't just threatening him. They'd taken his best friend, and the unspoken message was clear. We can reach anyone you care about. The photo trembled in his hands as he turned it over, revealing 3 words scrawled in red ink. Stop asking questions. But here's the thing about fear. It can paralyze you, or it can sharpen you. And as Jake stared at that photo, something in him snapped. Whoever these people were, whatever Martha was hiding, they'd crossed a line. Tyler wasn't just some pawn. He was family. And if they thought Jake would just roll over and obey now, they had no idea who they were dealing with. He grabbed his jacket, his hands steady for the first time all night. They wanted him to stop digging? Fine. He wouldn't dig. He'd burn the whole thing down. Kidnapped friend, dark revenge, dangerous secrets, shocking blackmail, high-stakes thriller, must-watch suspense, hidden enemies, psychological horror, true crime story, terrifying mystery. Part 5. The Truth Unmasked. Jake's hands were still shaking as he pulled out his phone to call the police, his thumb hovering over the dial button, until the screen lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. His stomach twisted, but he answered, bracing for another threat, another demand. Instead, a woman's voice, familiar but strained, cut through the silence. Jake, listen to me very carefully. You need to get to the old bus depot on 5th Street. Now. And come alone or Tyler dies. The line went dead before he could respond, but one detail sent a jolt of recognition through him. It wasn't Martha's voice. It was Ms. Carter, his high school guidance counselor, the one who'd always been so patient with him, so understanding. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. Ms. Carter? The woman who'd written his college recommendation letters, who'd talked him down from panic attacks in her office. She was part of this? Nothing made sense anymore. But with Tyler's life on the line, there was no time to question it. He sprinted out the door, his mind racing faster than his feet. The bus depot had been abandoned for years, its rusted gates and broken windows a relic of a different time. As he slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence, the crunch of gravel under his shoes sounded deafening in the heavy silence. Then movement, a shadow shifting near one of the derelict buses. Jake froze as a figure stepped into the dim light. Not Ms. Carter. Not Martha. But someone he never expected to see, his own father, who'd walked out on their family 5 years ago and never looked back. The man looked older, harder, his face lined with years of something darker than time. "You shouldn't have pushed this, kid," his father said, voice rough with regret. But since you did, you deserve to know the truth. And then the pieces began to fall into place. Martha wasn't just some random elderly woman. She was a retired federal witness, hidden in plain sight after testifying against a crime syndicate decades ago, the same syndicate Jake's father had been tangled up with before he disappeared. That bus ride? It wasn't an accident. Martha had been watching Jake for weeks, recognizing the same reckless arrogance in him that had once defined his father. She'd let him insult her, let him dig his own grave, because she needed to know, was he like his dad? Would he double down when challenged, or was there something redeemable beneath the bravado? But the real twist? Ms. Carter wasn't a villain. She was Martha's daughter, part of a network protecting her mother's identity. And Tyler? He was never in danger. The photo was staged, a desperate ploy to force Jake into the open before the real threats found him, because the syndicate had caught wind of his digging, and they didn't ask questions before silencing loose ends. Jake's knees nearly buckled under the weight of it all. This wasn't just about karma or a lesson in respect. This was about survival. His father's past had come roaring back, and Jake had stumbled blindly into a war he never knew existed. But the most chilling realization? Martha hadn't been testing him to punish him. She'd been testing him to save him. Shocking betrayal, hidden identity revealed, family secrets exposed, witness protection twist, crime syndicate danger, mind-blowing plot twist, high-stakes survival, must-watch mystery, true story thriller, unexpected villain. Part 6. The Ultimatum. Jake stood frozen in the abandoned bus depot, the weight of his father's words pressing down on him like a physical force. The man he hadn't seen in 5 years, the man he'd spent so long resenting, was now staring at him with a mix of exhaustion and urgency, as if waiting for Jake to process the impossible truth. But before Jake could even form a response, his father grabbed his arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. They're coming, Jake. And when they get here, they won't ask questions. They'll just clean up loose ends, starting with you. The raw fear in his father's voice sent a cold ripple down Jake's spine. This wasn't a warning. This was a countdown. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Echoing through the hollowed-out depot like a death knell. Jake's father shoved him toward a rusted maintenance door, hissing under his breath. Run.
Now.
And don't look back. But Jake hesitated. Because if he ran, what happened to his father? To Tyler? To Martha? This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about who he was willing to become to survive. Was he really the kind of person who'd abandon everyone else to save himself? The footsteps grew louder. Closer. A shadow stretched long across the concrete floor, the silhouette of a man holding something glinting in the dim light. Jake's pulse roared in his ears. His father's grip tightened, but instead of running, Jake wrenched free and turned toward the approaching threat. "No," he said, voice steadier than he felt. I'm done hiding. What happened next was a blur. A gunshot cracked through the air. Jake's father lunged, knocking him to the ground as the bullet ricocheted off the metal siding above them. There was shouting, Ms. Carter's voice, sharp with command, then Martha's, low and furious. More figures emerged from the shadows, but Jake couldn't tell who was friend or foe anymore. All he knew was that in the chaos, his father was bleeding, a dark stain spreading across his shirt from where the bullet had grazed him. Jake pressed his hands against the wound, his fingers slick and trembling, his mind screaming that this was his fault. If he hadn't pushed, if he hadn't been so reckless. Then, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Martha. Her face was grim, her eyes reflecting something Jake had never seen in them before. Not anger, not disappointment, but resolve. Asterisk, you want the truth? Asterisk, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Asterisk, then here it is. You have 5 minutes to decide. Come with us now, and we can protect you. But you'll never see your old life again. No friends. No family. No name. Or stay and take your chances with them. Asterisk, she jerked her chin toward the shadows where the shooter had vanished. Asterisk, but know this, if you stay, you're signing everyone you love's death warrant. The words hit like a sledgehammer. This wasn't a choice. This was a sacrifice. And as the sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second, Jake realized one horrifying thing. There was no right answer. Impossible choices, life or death decision, shocking ultimatum, high-stakes escape, family betrayal, witness protection, crime syndicate showdown, must-watch suspense, emotional thriller, true story survival. Asterisk, the quiet man saw Reyes's hand move toward his hip a split second before the gun cleared its holster, but instinct was faster than betrayal. He lunged across the table, driving his shoulder into Reyes's ribs as the first shot shattered the lamp overhead, plunging the room into darkness, lit only by the erratic glow of the muted television. They hit the ground hard, the detective's breath exploding from his lungs as the quiet man wrenched the weapon free and pressed the barrel under Reyes's chin. Talk fast, he growled. Whose side are you really on? Reyes's laugh was bloody and broken. You still don't get it, he choked out. There are no sides. Just people who know the truth and people who don't. Then his head jerked toward the window, a deliberate tell. The quiet man barely rolled clear before the glass exploded inward, the sniper round punching through the wall where his skull had been half a heartbeat earlier. He was moving before the second shot came, dragging Reyes with him into the hallway as the apartment erupted in gunfire. Plaster rained down as the quiet man shoved the detective against the wall, his voice a razor's edge. Ironclad? Worse, Reyes spat. NSA, Black Ops. They've been inside this thing from the start. Your whole team in Al Raqqa? They weren't just cleaning up Mason, they were erasing a program. Something that got too big to bury quietly. The quiet man's mind raced. The altered mission files. The Phantom Doctor. The way Mason had known they were coming. It wasn't just a corporate cover-up, it was a government-sanctioned purge. And he'd been part of it. Reyes grabbed his arm, his eyes wild. They're not just after you and Kara. They're scrubbing everyone connected to Ironclad's Wetwork division. My brother found out what they were really doing over there, testing enhanced interrogation tech on American prisoners. When he tried to blow the whistle, they made it look like suicide. He coughed, red flecking his lips. Hargrove didn't just betray you. He's running the whole damn operation. Footsteps pounded in the stairwell. Too many, too organized. The quiet man yanked Reyes to his feet, shoving the gun back into his hands. You knew this would happen, he accused. I knew they'd come, Reyes corrected, racking the slide. I didn't know they'd send him. The door burst inward. The figure in the hallway wasn't SWAT, wasn't NSA. The tactical gear was unmarked, the face obscured by a balaclava, but the way he moved, the way he cleared the threshold with predatory grace, was unmistakable. Mason. The quiet man's pulse hammered against his ribs. This wasn't the broken man he'd left in the desert. This was something sharper, colder, a weapon stripped of everything but purpose. Mason's rifle swept the room, hesitated on Reyes, then locked onto the quiet man. Hello, brother, he said, his voice distorted through the mask's filter. Miss me? The final reckoning is here. The quiet man is out of time, out of allies, and staring down the barrel of a ghost's gun. But when the dust settles, one terrifying question will remain. Who's really pulling Mason's trigger? The answer will rewrite history. Stay tuned. The endgame starts now. Asterisk, asterisk, Part 7. The Conspiracy Unraveled. The sirens grew deafening, their wails slicing through the night like a blade, but Jake barely heard them. His hands were still pressed against his father's wound, sticky with blood, his mind reeling from Martha's ultimatum. 5 minutes. That's all he had to decide the rest of his life. But before he could even process the impossible choice, Ms. Carter yanked him backward, her face pale under the flickering depot lights. "They're not just after you, Jake," she hissed. They're after everyone who knows. Your mom, Tyler, your teachers. They've been watching longer than you think." A new kind of terror seized him. This wasn't just about him anymore. The syndicate hadn't just resurfaced. They'd been lying in wait, weaving themselves into the fabric of his life without him ever noticing. The substitute teacher who'd always asked too many questions. The wrong number calls his mom had been getting for weeks. Even Tyler's new girlfriend, who'd appeared out of nowhere and encouraged him to push Jake for details about Martha. It had all been a setup. A slow, methodical trap. Across the depot, Martha was barking orders into a burner phone, her voice sharp with urgency. We need extraction now. The kid knows too much. But then movement. A figure stepped from the shadows behind her, and Jake's blood turned to ice. Officer Delgado. The same cop who'd given a talk at Jake's school about street safety last month. The one who'd patted him on the back and told him to stay out of trouble. Only now, his friendly smile was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. In his hand, a gun glinted under the dim light. Martha didn't even see him coming. No. Jake screamed, lurching forward, but it was too late. The gunshot echoed like thunder. Martha crumpled. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Jake's breath lodged in his throat. Ms. Carter's choked sob cut through the silence. Even his father, bleeding and weak, let out a raw, broken noise. But Officer Delgado just adjusted his grip on the gun, his expression eerily calm as he turned toward Jake. "You were supposed to walk away, kid," he said, almost regretful. Now look what you made me do." The truth crashed over Jake like a tidal wave. The police weren't coming to save them. They were part of it. And as Delgado raised the gun again, Jake realized. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was an extermination. Shocking betrayal, corrupt cop exposed, high-stakes shootout, witness protection fail, crime syndicate conspiracy, life or death escape, must-watch thriller, true story twist, intense confrontation, hidden enemies revealed. Part 8. The Final Reckoning. Time seemed to fracture as Officer Delgado's gun swung toward Jake. A split second stretched into eternity. The metallic tang of blood filled the air, his father's ragged breaths the only sound in the suffocating silence. But then, a blur of movement. Ms. Carter lunged, knocking Delgado off balance just as the gun roared, the bullet embedding itself in the depot wall inches from Jake's head. The impact sent them both crashing to the ground, Delgado's elbow slamming into her ribs with a sickening crack. Jake didn't think, he moved. Snatching a rusted pipe from the debris, he swung with every ounce of fury and fear burning inside him. The pipe connected with Delgado's wrist, the gun clattering across the concrete. For a moment it was chaos. His father dragged himself toward Martha's motionless body, pressing shaking fingers to her neck. Ms. Carter scrambled for the gun, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Delgado snarled, clutching his wrist, but his eyes, cold and calculating, never left Jake's face. You still don't get it, do you? He spat. This was never about you. It was about her. He jerked his chin toward Martha. 30 years she's been hiding. 30 years we've been waiting. And you, a spoiled little punk, almost ruined it all. Jake's grip tightened on the pipe. The pieces were there, jagged and sharp, but he couldn't make them fit. Why now? Why him? Delgado laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Your dad was supposed to lead us to her. Instead, he vanished. But we knew he'd come back for you eventually. The truth hit Jake like a sucker punch. His father hadn't abandoned them. He'd been running to keep them safe. And Jake, with his stupid, reckless pride, had led the wolves right to their door. A groan cut through the tension. Martha's fingers twitched, her eyelids fluttering. She was alive, barely. Delgado's face twisted in rage. He lunged for the gun, but Ms. Carter was faster. The shot rang out, echoing through the depot like a death knell. Delgado staggered, clutching his shoulder, but he didn't go down. Instead, his free hand yanked a second gun from his ankle holster and aimed it at Jake's father. "Enough games," Delgado hissed. Jake's world narrowed to that single moment. The gun. His father's exhausted, resigned expression. The realization that this was how it ended, not with some grand victory, but with a choice. He could dive in front of the bullet. He could try to swing the pipe again. He could beg. But as Delgado's finger tightened on the trigger, a voice cut through the darkness. "Drop it, Ramon." The command came from behind them, calm and authoritative. A figure stepped into the dim light, an older man in a tailored suit, his salt and pepper hair perfectly groomed, his eyes like flint. Delgado froze. Boss. He choked out, the word laced with disbelief. The man didn't acknowledge him. Instead, he looked at Jake, then at Martha, his mouth curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You've caused quite the mess, Mrs. Vasquez," he said. But I suppose I should thank you. You led us right to the last piece we needed." Jake's blood ran cold. Because the man wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a syringe. And Jake finally understood. They didn't want Martha dead. They wanted her silent. Final showdown, shocking villain reveal, last stand confrontation, crime boss twist, witness protection exposed, life or death climax, must-watch finale, psychological thriller, unexpected betrayal, true crime story, final chapter. The truth that remains. The syringe glinted in the dim light as the suited man stepped closer, his polished shoes crunching over broken glass with eerie precision. Jake's body screamed at him to move, to do something, but the weight of exhaustion and terror pinned him in place. It was Martha who broke the silence, her voice weak but razor-sharp as she propped herself up on one elbow, blood soaking through her sweater. "You always did love your dramatic entrances, Victor," she coughed, her eyes burning with decades-old hatred. The man, Victor, smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "And you always talked too much," he murmured, flicking the cap off the syringe. But don't worry. This will make sure that's no longer a problem." Jake's father lunged then, a guttural roar tearing from his throat as he tackled Victor to the ground. The syringe skittered across the concrete, and chaos erupted. Ms. Carter fired at Delgado, the bullet grazing his leg as he scrambled for cover. Jake seized the moment, grabbing Martha's arm and hauling her behind a rusted bus chassis, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Listen to me," she whispered, her fingers digging into his wrist with surprising strength. Victor's not just a syndicate boss. He's the reason your father left. The reason I've been hiding. And if he gets that syringe in me, everyone I've ever protected dies with my silence." Her other hand pressed something cold into Jake's palm, a tiny USB drive, barely larger than a thumbnail. "It's all here. Proof. Names. Everything. Get it to the FBI field office on." A gunshot cut her off, the bullet pinging off the metal beside them. What happened next would haunt Jake forever. His father, bloody and battered, managed to wrench Victor's gun away, but not before Victor pulled a knife, slashing upward in a vicious arc. Jake watched in horror as his father staggered back, crimson blooming across his shirt. Time slowed. Ms. Carter's scream echoed. Delgado, half crawling toward the syringe, froze. And Victor just smiled, wiping the blade clean on his slacks as if he'd done nothing more than spill his morning coffee. That was the moment something in Jake shattered. And something else was born. He moved without thinking. The USB drive burned a hole in his pocket as he snatched the fallen pipe and swung with every ounce of rage, grief, and desperation inside him. The impact sent Victor crashing into a stack of oil drums, his head snapping back with a sickening crack. Jake didn't stop. He couldn't. Not until Ms. Carter grabbed his arm, her voice breaking through the red haze. "Jake. Look at me. He's done. It's over."
And it was.
Victor lay motionless, his expensive suit now just a shroud. Delgado, bleeding and pale, had collapsed near the depot doors. Sirens, real ones this time, not syndicate plants, wailed in the distance. But Jake only had eyes for his father, crumpled on the ground, his breath bubbling wetly. Hey, stay with me," Jake begged, pressing his hands against the wound as if he could somehow push the life back inside. His father's lips moved, the words barely audible. "Should've stayed gone," he rasped. But you're worth it. His hand found Jake's, squeezing once before going slack. The aftermath was a blur. FBI agents swarmed the depot. Paramedics pronounced Victor dead. Martha and Ms. Carter were rushed to the hospital, the USB drive already in federal custody. And Jake? He sat on the back bumper of an ambulance, wrapped in a shock blanket that did nothing to stop the trembling. The agent questioning him kept saying words like witness protection and fresh start, but all Jake could think about was the last time he'd seen his father. 5 years ago, slamming the door after another fight about missed curfews and bad grades. He'd never gotten to say he was sorry, never gotten to say goodbye. 3 days later, at a safe house outside the city, Martha found him staring blankly at a news report about the syndicate's takedown. She moved slower now, her arm in a sling, but her eyes were alive in a way Jake hadn't seen before. "He saved more than just us, you know," she said quietly, nodding at the screen. Your father. Jake didn't respond.
Couldn't.
Martha sighed, dropping a manila envelope on the table between them. New identities. For you and your mother.
You leave tonight.
Jake finally looked up. And you? Martha's smile was small but real. Turns out I'm done hiding. She turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, and Jake? That attitude of yours? It's gonna save your life someday. Just like it saved mine. The door clicked shut behind her. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the safe house walls in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere, a new life waited. Somewhere, the past was finally buried. But in that quiet room, with the weight of the USB drive still in his pocket and his father's voice echoing in his ears, Jake made a silent promise. He wouldn't run. Not forever. Just long enough to come back stronger.